Mate, I really lost my rag just now. Are you having a laugh? I'm absolutely fuming. That's how wound up I got about the office work and how it all went sideways again. But could the KTM 390 SMC-R calm me down? The answer's in this video. You might know the feeling when at work something just doesn't go the way you want. You could blow your top. I do that sometimes when the others aren't listening. And I'm old enough now that I climb on the bike and don't start venting my anger on the throttle, but instead I let myself relax, start taking in the sensory impressions and sorting out new thoughts. And that's where the KTM 390 SMC-R is a wildly fascinating motorcycle. Because coming from that Supermoto corner, it's a bike concept that lives to entertain you. It thrives on you having fun in the saddle. At the same time, though, KTM want to pull off that split and say, okay, it should also take the lads and lasses who ride it from A to B in everyday life. And here on the Supermoto track, I want on the one hand to shake off the office aggravation and on the other to put in a decent lap time. And now I'll try to sort for you how well that comes together. Let's start from my point of view with the key drawback. Basically, nothing else really stood out to me. The riding position and the bars. This seat and bar tank setup, this configuration, means that in everyday use you still get a fairly approachable, supportive riding position that's comfortable, where you can get your feet down even if you're not that tall. Here on the racetrack though, it means that classic move of shuffling right forward to load up the front wheel takes a fair bit of effort, because in this seat tank transition, this transition section, you feel a bit of resistance. So you need a bit of discipline to really sit far forward. And that's the compromise that on the track or a supermoto circuit slightly denies you that last bit of perfection. On the flip side, yes, it was probably the right way to keep the bike accessible. What does work well, after all, it's still a road bike, is that playful charge into the arc. I can't actually ride proper supermoto. I did it last year, well, 22 years ago, indoors. And I could drift and all that, but my last drift was, I think, 20 years ago. I just gave it a go, grabbed the brake, shifted down 3 gears, and that's where it starts to step out really cleanly and pleasantly and not frighteningly, consciously leaving that stable zone. And it gives you the chance quite early to tip the bike into the arc and then carry it back into a phase of acceleration within the arc again. Right, it happens pretty quickly. That sporty edge, that dynamic, that supermoto-ish urgency is in there, even though the riding position is a bit everyday friendly. So pretty quickly you catch yourself with the rear wheel locking. Pretty quickly you catch yourself really pressing nicely into the arc. And if you look here, yeah, we need to film this. There are no chicken strips left. That's straight away maximum lean angle. I'll just check the front for safety. It's on Michelin Power 6. That's really lovely. Blimey, it's hot. Ridden right to the edge. So the confidence is very, very high. Very, very quickly. I'm only doing 10 laps. Very, very quickly, I trusted myself that the bike would keep tipping in constantly. And within the limits of my restricted supermoto skills, I had a fine bit of fun here. And pretty quickly, I think I managed some decent lean angles. Then there's the fact that the engine, as a single cylinder, feels relatively unspectacular. And that has pros and cons. On the one hand, it has this smooth running when you're on the brakes. in that chicane back there, in the on-off throttle transitions when you're driving out of the corner. Also in the way it starts, of course, in terms of vibration levels. It's a very everyday friendly unit. My son is 15 now. He rides around on his beta moped. I'd have no problem putting him on this. He'd have no problem doing his laps. He'd ride. That would be absolutely no issue. Thinking back, my first Supermoto was a 620 LC4 Super competition. Those who had won and know what I'm talking about, my son would never have survived learning to ride a motorcycle on that. It was an absolutely brutal beast. And it had all the drawbacks. It wouldn't start. It had insanely harsh on-off reactions on a closed throttle and hellish throttle response from the grip. Very, very demanding, which means all the things that make life hard, this domesticated unit doesn't have them, but it also doesn't have the things people celebrate about single cylinders, that roughness, that irrational, nastier, wilder side. So it revs up unspectacularly. And in the braking zone, the engine braking is unspectacular too. The only time it feels a bit strained, where you notice it's a single cylinder, is when it's screaming up top and really being wrung out. It feels more labored than it would with, say, 2 or 3 cylinders. For people who use it day to day, and for those who don't know the old singles, that will seem perfectly normal. Those who used to have the LC 4500, 600, 400, yeah, they won't find a worthy successor here. It conveys too little brutality, too little fear, too little menace. The rest of it is spot on again. I just tapped the sportiest mode up on the display, and suddenly I could drift, suddenly I could get on the gas, and the ABS worked beautifully right to the apex. That's astonishing. We'd ridden bikes here beforehand that are 3 times as expensive as this, and their ABS opened up in the corner. You had problems on the exit, you had problems with wheelies. It's breathtaking how good KTM's electronic systems are in this small, affordable class. Truly breathtaking. The suspension is sporty and firmer than you'd expect because it's still an everyday motorbike. I'm curious what the colleagues will say in the daily use test. They're heading off now. Let's see if it turns out too uncomfortable. It was a practical, laid-back chassis that didn't remind me of some riding school moped on the Supermoto track, but of a sporty, laid-back motorbike. But I've got to stop now because on the one hand, I'm sweating buckets, and on the other, I don't want to give everything away. Because with this bike, we're, I think, going to do 2 more videos. One comparing it with the Enduro and one the B-Road test. Look forward to those, dear subscribers. Drop a thumbs up below, hit subscribe. You won't miss anything with the new KTM 390 SMC-R. And now let's have the lap time, please.